And good afternoon. My name is Ryan Bellamore, owner and publisher of WhatsUpNewp. It is Wednesday, June 21st, just past 2 p.m. My pal, Mr. Frank Prosdich, joins me. How are you, pal?
Just doing fine there, Ryan. How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Let me rephrase that like a Rhode Islander. How you doing?
How you doing? I want to point people, we've been having some great conversations with a wide variety of people. You can find them all on WhatsUpNewp.com. Just had Newport Film on, who kicks off their outdoors summer season tomorrow night. You can watch that full interview with the executive director up on WhatsUpNewp.com now, as well as you can see our recent conversation with the mayor, school superintendent. We have everybody, and we're getting into a political season, not one that was planned. So we have 454 candidates for Congressional District 1 that we'll be interviewing, I'm sure, very soon.
Well, we'll find out how many in a few days when we have the filing deadline. Last count, I think I had 15, but I ran into somebody last night who is very heavy into the Democratic Party. He told me it's 17 now.
Okay.
So I don't know who the other two are.
All right. Today we have a author who, let me use his own quote here. A tall writer from the smallest state, Frank, is what he calls himself. And his website is byfletch.wordpress.com. And Fletcher Michael joins us. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you both for having me on. This is great.
Good to have you on.
I was just checking out your WordPress site, which we are going to put on the bottom here. But looking at some of you have you have selected journalism essays. You have some short stories, some satire. 2 novels on there, a pretty impressive list for such a young lad.
And how young might that be, Fletcher?
I'll be 29 in August. Young as I might be, I'm always going to be thinking about Zadie Smith publishing White Teeth at 24 years old. So I am still filled with enough self-doubt to keep me going. I like to stay busy writing-wise. I started out in sort of journalism, essay, short fiction kind of things, and the satire that you're mentioning there, and gradually just novel.
And teaching English in Taiwan.
Yeah, I spent a year doing that right after college with my partner, Julia. It was great. We were in Chiayi, Taiwan, and we just had all these different students from first graders all the way through adult learners. And it was an amazing experience.
And I'm going to pull it up here just so people can see the cover of a book that we are going to be chatting about today, which has some local ties. But why don't you tell us about your local ties to Aquidneck Island as I pull this up here?
Sure. Yeah. So, for my sins, I was not born in Rhode Island, so I can never be truly considered a full Rhode Islander by the Rhode Islanders. But I was born in Spokane, and then my parents took a teaching job. They both were teaching English at Portsmouth Abbey School on Aquidneck Island, right there in Portsmouth. And so we moved out there when I was about 9 years old, grew up on the campus there, went to Portsmouth Abbey, and that's where I met so many of my friends that ended up being characters in this novel. And spent my summers working at the liquor store in Newport and bartending at the Newport polo matches and working as a camp counselor at Carnegie Abbey. And so went through high school there, and I ended up going to Salve Regina for college. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but Aquidneck Island is a really special place, and it just felt like something that sort of had to be captured in some way, at least from my perspective. And that's sort of how the novel came to be.
Yeah, and the novel is Glass Bottle Season. And I want to bring up the cover so people can see it and maybe get used to seeing it. But it's about summertime on Rhode Island's luxurious Aquidneck Island. Excellent.
Yeah, there it is. It's mainly about this. Go ahead,
Frank.
No, go ahead. And then what I wanted to do also is kind of lead up to that, to just find out a little bit more about your other writing in a variety of magazines.
Sure.
Are we talking short stories, or what kinds of things were you doing?
Yeah, sort of a variety of things. You can see on my website there, it's a lot of satire. And so I was writing for these sites called Slackjaw and Jane Austen's Wastebasket, and for Points in Case. And so I sort of came up reading a lot of satire, and sort of that's the writing that I admired. So that's sort of what got me into writing in the first place, is just writing short satire pieces, things that I found funny. But then I sort of started finding a way to transform nonfiction experiences that I was having into fictional short stories. And I like to base a lot of my own writing in my own experiences and within settings that I'm familiar with. And oftentimes that is Aquidneck Island. And so, yeah, started out in short fiction and then worked a little journalism on the side for actually the Portsmouth Abbey Bulletin, one of my alma mater's publication. And eventually just found a way to link those experiences into a full-blown novel.
Your first was called Vulture?
My first novel, yeah, published by Rebel Satori Press, is called Vulture. And that one is a real departure from what people would read in Glass Bottle Season. That one's sort of a dystopian, post-apocalyptic kind of thing set in Spokane, Washington. And then Glass Bottle Season came about just because I'd had all these experiences right after college with my close friends, and we were all working on the island that summer. And it just felt like we hit all the Newport, Rhode Island things that summer. So we were doing Folk Fest, and we were all working down in Newport, meeting up after work at the beaches, going to Atlantic Grill for breakfast, and going to each other's houses for parties, going out to the bars, of course, down on Thames Street. And I just thought that the summer provided a really great sort of narrative backbone to sort of link all these stories up. And so that's why the novel is set over the course of the 3 months of summer in Newport, Rhode Island. And that's sort of how that came to be.
Reviews, at least that you included on the back, really call it a great summer read.
Yeah, I like to think so. Yeah, it's sort of the most summery novel I could imagine. It's quite a bit of it is outdoors on the beaches and sort of in the streets of Newport. There's a lot of drinking going on, as people will find as they read through the book. But that's how Newport is in the summer. It's sort of there's a quote from the novel, extending the evening a few drinks longer, and that's sort of how it felt. He's got these really long days, and people want to make the most of them in Newport, and so that's spending time with friends, oftentimes drinking.
You mentioned that you include a lot of your friends' names in here as characters. Do those names and characters match up in terms of personality, or
yeah,
or are they just
not in every case, but in most cases, I like to think so. Yeah, I think that it's sort of impossible to make anybody into a two-dimensional character, and so I kind of just cherry-picked these little character traits amongst my friends that I thought that would make for a good character description, and built the characters out that way around these little traits of theirs. And of course, it's fictionalized, and I see them as far more complex people than they're presented as in the novel. But again, there's also fully fictionalized characters that are sort of composites of Newport archetypes.
give us a little synopsis of what the novel is about.
Sure, yeah. So, like I said, this is the summer after Raymond Domingo Wilson. He's the protagonist. Summer after college, and he and all his friends are working these summer jobs in Newport. And he's not really part of this Newport elitist class that his friends are. He kind of just lucked into this scholarship at an elite boarding school on the island. And that sort of thrust him into the company of this crowd. But they're all really close friends. But he's beginning to get a little bit concerned about what's going to happen at the end of the summer when his friends move on to Boston, start up careers. Is he going to be left behind? He's a little worried that he doesn't really fit into this crowd ultimately. Maybe it's fun for the summer for them, but he's worried that he's going to get kind of washed out by just his socioeconomic status. He's half Cuban like myself. And so that in and of itself sort of sets him apart from the Newporters and the Newport scene that he's sort of living through. So it follows his experience working at this boutique wine shop on Bellevue Avenue, making deliveries to the old money elite, hanging out with his friends, going to parties. But always the question is, what's going to happen when this summer ends? And so he has this sort of harebrained scheme to become a lawyer. And he thinks that if he just become a lawyer, if he can just get himself to Boston, then he'll be set. He'll be cemented into this lifestyle that he really wants to remain in now that he's had a taste of it. But then the summer sort of takes a turn on him. He falls in love with this local old money doyen of Newport type. That's the Jesse Biddle character. And they meet at the Newport Folk Fest. And things seem to be going really well for Ray. But then without spoiling anything, there's a turn that takes place. And the question of whether or not he'll remain with his friends is very much up for grabs.
Is there part of the theme obviously is just a fun read, but is there an overall theme to this or message that you want to get out?
I think that if there is an overall theme, it is really just a linked set of vignettes, really. Each one kind of a snapshot of a moment in the Newport summer. But if there's a theme, it's a coming of age novel, and it's sort of learning to accept yourself and accept your circumstances without feeling the need to change yourself to become something that you're not, simply to meet up with the trappings of a lifestyle that you don't even know you necessarily want for yourself. It really is a Bildungsroman kind of novel where the character is going through a journey. It's a pivotal time in his life. He's 21 years old. And that's a difficult time, I think, for people to wrap their heads around that concept. It feels right after college, you feel like, okay, so now this is when real life starts. But I think that, taking the pressure off that feeling is sort of the aim with a novel like this, to focus more on accepting of the self and accepting of your own character, rather than feeling the need to jump ahead and skip steps to adulthood or whatever real life you want for yourself.
This was published when?
This just came out June 6th, 2023. Yeah. And it's Turner Books.
And again, this is available on Amazon, at Charter Books, wherever you can.
Anywhere you can get books, pretty much. Yeah. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, directly from the publisher, Turner Books, and the imprint is Keylight. And they've been great. It's a beautiful novel, as you can see from the cover there.
Tell me about your sense of satisfaction now that you've completed 2 novels. Do you feel now that you're comfortable in your writing?
I think that I really hope to one day be able to say yes to that question. I think that I'm so much the kind of person that's always on to the next project. But the response to this has been, this novel has been really positive, and I really only care what my friends and my community in Rhode Island think about the novel, and they've all really enjoyed it. And so to see that I've gotten my writing to a point where I have my own book in the hands of family and friends, that's huge for me. And, that is really sustaining. I like that I have that to look back on. And I am satisfied with the end product of this novel. It started in fall 2016 that I started writing it. And it was just sort of a series of short stories and essays. And these were mainly non-fictional. It was just sort of reports of my experience with my friends on the Quidnick Island. But then to have worked it up over the years into a full novel and to have found a way to connect everything through a central plot, that's extremely satisfying. And it really was just a fabulous learning experience to work with a publisher like Turner for my second novel, just to learn the ins and outs of the publishing industry. So yeah, there's a lot to reflect on and a lot to be proud of, I think, in my own case, and a lot more to look forward to.
Is writing your only profession, or are you working otherwise?
Oh man, I wish I could say yes to that one too. I actually just yesterday accepted a job with the Pitt Improv Theater in New York City. So I'm the general manager of that theater now. I've been bartending in New York for the past 6 months. And before that, I was the managing director of a TV and film studio in Hell's Kitchen. And creatively, outside of writing, I do quite a bit of acting as well. I'm doing a play right now that will go up in August.
And where's that going to be?
The play is touring a little bit. It's going to start out in North Carolina before going on to Maryland. And then in the fall, it'll be in New York.
What is your next project?
So my next project is, I've got a couple of irons in the fire right now, but the few that I'm most excited about are, I've got a new novel coming, or that I've just sent out to publishers, and it's with my publisher now, called Sidewalk Dance. And that's one that's sort of detailing a coming of age story, but set in New York. And it's sort of the anti-artist's novel. It's an anti-Künstlerroman, where it's sort of a deluded artist in New York City. And that's sort of what makes it different from other novels of that kind, I like to think. But then outside of that, I've been writing some plays, and I'm hoping to get a one-act staged and a full stage play up on stage somewhere in the next year here in New York.
When you look at the whole breadth of your writing, is there a common theme that runs throughout it, whether it be a play, whether it be a short story, whether it be a novel? Is there some commonality among them all?
I think that if there is a commonality among it all, it's sort of about feeling like an outsider in some situation. And I think that that's sort of not all that philosophical, just because I think that that's sort of the position that a writer inhabits by instinct. It's the observer, and you kind of need to have an outside perspective to sort of create that world, I think. So that's a theme that definitely finds its way into a lot of my writing. Also, there's just a lot of drinking, a lot of stuff that I write about. Drinking and drugs always makes its way in somehow, and sort of tangential issues of addiction that sort of always fuels my plots, it turns out. But I think that there's a lot of life that happens around those things, and that's sort of why they're interesting to me.
Do you see yourself as a character within these stories, within these novels, that you're reflecting either through one or more of the characters?
I mean, not in everything I write, but in this most recent Glass Bottle season, absolutely. Yeah, it's sort of impossible for me to have denied my own perspective there, just because it was based on my own friend group, and I was having to look through my friends' eyes and my family members and my community's eyes to create these characters. And so that's a novel that's in particularly I'm really invested in, and hard for me to remove myself. But it does seem to be the case that I often write about men in their 20s trying to figure life out. And I think that that's just a perspective that can be limiting to me, but I'm still finding new ways to explore that perspective.
So in a couple of years, you're going to be writing about men in their 30s?
Yeah, that's the dream, right?
Tell me when you first recognized that you would try your hand at writing. Was this something? I'm a long-time journalist. I was writing stories when I was in elementary school. None of them any good, but it was something that I felt, and I became a journalist. When did you feel that you were going to pursue a career in writing and acting, for that matter?
Sure. Yeah. The writing feels like there was just little steps along the way that sort of led me to be like, okay, yeah, this is, I can sit down and write a novel. Part of it is just that both my parents are English teachers. And so I grew up in a house full of books, and we were always reading and talking about what we were reading. But then beyond that, I remember my brother and a friend of his in elementary school, we went to Melville School in Portsmouth. And he and his friend would write these stories sort of based around a holiday or like a snow day or something. And they'd be these short, fun stories. And so when then I found a friend of my own, and I was like, well, let's just do these too. And so I kind of just stole that that idea from my brother, and started penning stories with a friend of mine. And then another time I remember this faculty member at Portsmouth Abbey had some joke about a fortune cookie wrapper in a fortune cookie. And the wrapper had some message from somebody imprisoned at the fortune cookie factory. And he was just telling a joke. It was at the dining hall at Portsmouth Abbey. But I think that the first story that I sat down and wrote was a story based around that little joke that he told about somebody trapped in a fortune cookie factory. And I wrote that out on, my dad had an old Underwood typewriter, and I just loved the clack of the keys on that thing. So I typed that one out. And then I was in a creative writing class, actually taught by my mom, Lorene Bonin, shout out. I know she's watching. And I had a short story about a mailman that was in high school that got honorable mention in a writing contest. And the Potter League for Animals also, when I was in elementary school, sponsored a writing contest about a lost cat. And I won that, I think, in the 5th grade. And it got me like this bag from the Potter League, and I got to go hang out with some dogs. So there was all these little steps along the way that sort of led me to think, okay, writing is something I might be good at. But it really wasn't until after I graduated college that I thought seriously about trying to write a novel. And it wasn't until I was writing these honest experiences about myself and my friends in Newport that summer that I started to see a way where maybe this could be worked up into a novel. And I eventually ended up putting it aside for a while so I could work on Vulture. But by that time, I did have the confidence to pursue writing. As far as acting, I came to that through writing, unsurprisingly. I came to New York looking to do some playwriting and some screenwriting, and a friend of mine recommended I take an acting class just so that I can meet other actors to recruit into being in my projects. And so I took him up on that, and I just had a really great experience with the class. I really enjoyed performing. I really enjoyed being around other people that were creatively motivated. And so I've kind of just stuck with it. And I particularly like the theater world, but it's taken me in all kinds of directions. And when you pursue something like acting or writing in New York City, you just have sort of interesting experiences that fall into place around your lifestyle, just because of the way that life shakes out for somebody that calls himself a creative in New York City. So that's been sort of the upshot. I kind of just want to maintain that stimulus by remaining in the arts.
When you take a look at your writing and you take a look at those people who have influenced you either directly or authors that have influenced you through their work, who would they be?
Yeah, it would be impossible for me not to say Fitzgerald and Hemingway. I mean, those were the authors that I was reading the most when I first really
they'll
started
make
writing.
it someday.
Yeah, right. There's some promising up and comers, right? I was reading everything they'd written pretty much right after college, and just thinking, God, if I could get a sentence like that down on the page, and just being wowed by some of these phrases. But then make it even more contemporary. Edith Wharton, Age of Innocence, was massive for me, and especially because of the Newport connection in that novel. I took a great Newport literature class at Salve Regina, and that book featured prominently. I'd read it in other classes, but each time I read that one, it unlocks something new for me. And she captures the social, the novel of manners so well, and that's something that particularly fascinates me. And then even more contemporarily, Jay McInerney's Bright Lights, Big City. That's one of the greatest coming of age novels that I've ever read. And another person that I aspire to write something like that. Zadie Smith's White Teeth, or Jhumpa Lahiri, The Namesake. Novels like that, where it's sort of capturing this world through the perspective of an outsider quite often. Those are books that I'm always going to come back to.
Tell me a little bit about the influence that Aquidneck Island as a whole may have had upon your own creativity, your own ability to want to reach beyond, to be a little bit more expressive as a culture on Aquidneck Island. There's a uniqueness to the place for sure, and a uniqueness to Newport that you don't find in very many other places. How does that influence both your writing, your acting, and your creativity?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that if it influences it, it's basically the smallness of a place like Aquidneck Island. You leave the house, and I'm bound to bump into two people I know, which can be great and sort of a nuisance at times, because you feel like there's always eyes watching. And so part of you is sort of always maintaining that ear to the community, and you're always constantly aware of the doings of other people. Rhode Island is the smallest state. Aquidneck Island is an island off of the smallest state. And I grew up on a boarding school campus, so that's a further bubble by which to feel observed. And so I think that a penchant for performing sort of comes with that territory. But I think that I'm also really lucky to come from a place like Aquidneck Island, just because I have such a close-knit community that supports me when I do things like this. I just had a book release party for Glass Bottle Season at Ida Lewis, with all these friends and family, many of them who are in the novel. And it was just a beautiful night, not just because this book was finally out and it's finally released, but they're just wonderful people to be around. And it's nice when you recognize that you're not the only person that feels that Aquidneck Island is a special place. That's sort of a commonly held belief, particularly in the summer. And I'm really lucky to be surrounded by people that feel that same way. And as I'm sure you're aware, it's tough for Rhode Islanders to leave Rhode Island, and there's a reason for that. It's a great place to be, and there's such a distinct culture to a place like Aquidneck Island that makes for really fruitful creation, I think, because you get to know all these characters and these settings. I think it's just built for movies or scripts or novels. That's why people are always coming back there to film things.
The contrast between Aquidneck Island, Newport, and New York City, Manhattan, couldn't be larger.
You're right.
Tell me the things that you have found that have been most surprising to you in New York City, and that brought you there. And I don't know whether it's going to keep you there, but where you see your long-term geographic location.
Sure. Yeah. My mother's going to be really interested in the answer to this question too. But
She called. She wanted me to ask that.
I'm sure, right? Yeah. So one thing that surprised me coming from a place like Aquidneck Island is the anonymity that you're afforded in a place like New York. You can go into the city, and no matter what you're doing, no matter how you're dressed, how you're acting, most people aren't going to bat an eye. There's just too much else going on. Everybody's pretty concerned with themselves. This is not the case in Aquidneck Island. But one thing that I've definitely taken with me is the creation of a community similar to the one that I grew up with in Aquidneck Island. You're used to being around a lot of your close friends and family because a lot of people remain in the area, and those roots and those ties are so strong that you're sort of always looking to recreate that. And I've sort of looked to do that through the arts, through acting and writing, making those connections. And it's funny, every time you're in New York and you meet somebody who has some connection to Rhode Island or to Massachusetts or anywhere in New England, you can sort of do the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon game to find some person that you guys have in common. But sort of the seeking out of that community, it takes effort in New York, whereas in Rhode Island, it's sort of baked in.
Where do you see your acting taking you, and which do you see will be more dominant as you go forward? Your acting or your writing? And tell us a little bit about this play that you're in.
Sure. Yeah. Tough to say which will be more dominant. I mean, right now, the universe seems to be pointing towards writing for me. And with acting, I'd really like to get to a place where I have some autonomy over the things that I can create. I'd like to, write and act and direct in the things that I am making. And I think that that's sort of what every artist, every creative person is looking for, is just sort of some level of agency in a career that affords you none. You're sort of at the mercy for so long, but to actually have some power to put wheels in motion that you want to put in motion, that's sort of the quest. I enjoy the acting, but I think that writing is near and dear to my heart, and that's always going to be my first thing. It's sort of what I'll always care the most about, I think, and it doesn't seem like that's ever going to go away. It's a drive to write things. When I think about creating anything, step one is always write it. And it really does start with the written word, and I don't see that changing very much for me.
In some parts of this country, there is clearly an effort on college campuses or by government on college campuses to stifle a sense of creativity. How was it at Salve? Did you feel that was an atmosphere that really fed into your desire for writing or for being creative in general?
Absolutely. I mean, my experience at Salve Regina couldn't have been more positive. I had such great professors, and particularly the English department was so supportive of me throughout my entire time there. I took a great creative writing class with Dr. Jen McClanahan. Dr. Stephen Trainer was my thesis advisor, and they really did give me creative leeway to sort of go in any direction that I wanted. They saw what my strengths were, and they allowed me to play towards those strengths. And so I couldn't have had a better experience, and I see them as very much on the right side of that debate of free speech and creative freedom.
Fletcher, we've covered a lot. I know, Ryan, you have any other questions? And Fletcher, is there anything else that you feel is important that people should know about you and about your novel?
All I can say is that I really think that this is a fun read for anybody that is living in Newport or Aquidneck Island or is familiar with the area. There's just a lot of maybe local characters that you'll recognize, local settings that you'll recognize, restaurants, bars, different beaches. There's just, I think, a lot for somebody from the area to get out of it. And if you're not from the area, I think that there's still a lot to get out of it. It's just a fun read. Everybody over the age of 21 has been 21 before. And I think that there's things to relate to therein.
Clever observation.
Fletcher, to just state how small the island is sometimes, I'm on the board of directors for Potter League for Animals. So I spent last night 2 hours last night. Yeah.
So Ryan, have you run across Fletcher's essay that got him that huge award?
I did not. I imagine I have not been on long enough.
Back in like 2003.
I mean, Fletcher got it when he was in the 5th grade, right? 5th grade, I think he said.
Yeah, like
2003. I was not on the board. I've only been on the last couple of years, but perhaps I'm going to let the executive director know what things like that can inspire. Here's a good example.
Yeah, if that still exists out there somewhere, that'd be really cool. Yeah,
maybe needs to host a book signing.
Yeah. That'd be great. I would absolutely do that. Yeah.
Powder League essay equals 2 novels or something like that.
Yeah, that's all you need.
I will. I'll pass the news on. So, byfletch.wordpress.com is where they can find out about all your writings. There's lots of great links to all different types of content that you have created, as well as your 2 books. And we wish you the very best of success.
And it's Glass Bottom Season by Fletcher Michael.
Yes, thank you both so much. I really appreciate this. And
thanks for being with us.
Thank you for everything you do for Newport. This is just an invaluable local news source. I really appreciate it.
And we'll see you. Let us know next time you're in town, and we'll set you up with our friends over at Charter Books. And
that'd be great.
Perhaps you can get over there and do a signing.
That'd be great.
That sounds perfect. Yeah, wonderful.
All right, Fletcher. Thank you very much. And it's byfletch.wordpress.com, and I'll run it along the bottom. And you can go there to find out more about Glass Bottle Season, which he published via Turner Publishing Keylight Books in 2023, just this month, and as well as Vulture, which came out in 2022, Rebel Satori Press. All right, Mr. Prosnitz.
Very good. Hey, well, I've got to say this. Hi, Ma, Fletcher's mom.
All righty. There you go. Thanks for watching. If you missed any portion of this show, if you want to watch it again, if you want to share it with a friend, you can find it on WhatsUpNewp.com. You take all of these interviews and you can watch them online, as well as you can listen to them via podcast if you are on the go. Byfletch.wordpress.com. Thanks for watching.